when it comes to the landscaping and the start of the project, if you're involved from the beginning, like try and find and make some suggestions by either doing it yourself or working with a regenerative landscape architect like myself, is to see like, okay, we will have to bulldoze the land because we need to pour foundations or we need to level it out. Okay, instead of removing all that soil, putting it into trucks, displacing it somewhere else, and then bringing new soil at the end, can we actually put the soil on the side, store it somewhere on the land for the time of the construction, and then reuse it to cover the soil again?
Hard Hat the CEO Day. Yes, it is time for another episode. And today we're going to talk about how to be CEO of your company and how landscaping can make that happen and improve upon the competitive market that we're all experiencing. And to help me do that, I've got Matthieu Mehuys. He is just moved down close to Portugal. Is that right? Am I saying that right? Okay.
Yeah.
And before he used to be in Belgium. But anyway, please help me welcome Matthieu. Matthieu, good to have you. And you're closer to our time zone. I know that's good for you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Chris, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. I'm very excited to talk about how we can actually bring more competitiveness to your business in construction and development. So to answer your first question, I'll give you my backstory. So I grew up on a family farm. Both my brother and father still today are farmers. And by the time I was between 3 and 5 years old, I became extremely fascinated with how plants can even grow. Like how on earth is it possible that a little seed can grow into a magnificent plant? That this was like my early memories as a child. And then I went on. I started my first vegetable garden when I was 5 years old, and it was a complete disaster, Chris. To be honest, like I had no clue what I was doing. On our farm, we were doing mostly cash crops and cattle, so big farming. But I asked my parents to start a vegetable garden. They said, okay, here's the little corner of the garden, do whatever you want. And I failed completely because I had no clue how to do gardening and landscaping. I was growing more weeds than anything else. So, and I'm telling you this story because it took a couple, almost 1 or 2 decades later, to understand like why are weeds such a problem in gardens and why are they so dominant. And in fact, we can talk more about it later. It's because nature actually is trying to help you. And it may sound weird now, but let's talk about it later. So, but I grew up in this farming environment, learned a lot about nature and farming, and then I did a bachelor degrees in garden design. I did a master degrees in landscape architecture and engineering of landscape parks and landscape design. And then I did what was expected of me, to get into a 9-to-5 job in Germany as an engineer in actually 2 companies that are high ranked, because Germany is like one of the top countries for building and engineering. So I did what was expected for me, but Chris, pretty much after a year, I became quite depressed, and I was like in this 9-to-5, which was very bureaucratic, and it wasn't for me. I'm still very grateful that I did that, because in Germany, I really learned how to do really good jobs and like be very systematic and have good system in place. And that's from my experience from Germany. But after 2.5 years of being depressed, I said, this is enough. I'm going to quit my job. I quit my job and I hit the road, and I traveled the world to find out about projects that are actually doing something good for the environment and that are doing great in business. So I went to visit a lot of eco projects, eco resorts, eco farms, and I really got deep into understanding how nature works. And then I actually went to the Amazon rainforest because I really wanted to see like what is like the purest form of nature, and it's in the Amazon rainforest. And I went and it was crazy, like the amount of wildlife that I saw and birds, and it was so beautiful and left a deep impression on me. And also to understand like this is something precious that we need to protect as a human race, because it's actually keeping us alive. Those natural environments, it's giving us drinkable water, it's giving us fresh air. So we need to take care of that. And then I went on, and actually from that travel, I got a tropical disease called dengue. I became really sick, and I lost 10 kilograms, and I'm already quite skinny. Yeah. So I was really thin, And actually my life went south. Like I didn't have much money because I was traveling. I pretty much lost all my money. My girlfriend dumped me at the time as well. Like it was a series of things that went down. I had to move in with my parents. And through that process, I asked myself some deeper questions like, why am I here? What am I doing here? And I figured out, okay, I need to help people to use nature to their advantage, because that's the way we can be able to make sure that we can sustain this beautiful planet. And then I dig deeper, like, how can I do it? Okay, you could go into politics. If you look at politics, not much changes, or they're not doing a great job at changing the world. Same with NGO work. I respect people that do NGO work. It's important, but it's not like making big change. It's not having huge impact. So if you then go deeper and you keep looking, you'll always end up in entrepreneurship, because that's actually the one thing that has always changed the world. It's three entrepreneurs like you and me getting out there, putting offers out with clients, negotiating, getting things going, and then building things. That's what really changes the world. So I said, okay, I'll start my own business in landscape architecture, and that's 5 years ago. And now we have clients in four continents. I help people both online and offline. So we work with people locally, both in Belgium, US, Europe. So we come in as a landscape architect, we design everything, and then we put all the drawings together so people can execute it with contractors, and we support that. I also coach people online how to do it themselves, and I coach other entrepreneurs how to start their own business as well. So that's in a nutshell what I've been up to in the past 2 decades, you could say, or
Okay.
more, 3 decades almost.
I was going to hold this question off till later, but since you kind of got into it, so how does understanding nature help you build your business?
That's a great question. So the thing is that we can reverse that question and look a little bit like, how have we been doing business in quite a while, is that we're mostly distracting from nature. We're taking oil, we're taking raw materials, and it's not very sustainable. Like it served its purpose to create the luxury lifestyle that we have today, to take what nature has given us, raw materials, everything, but it's not sustainable. Like we're running into in moments where we can no longer do that, and then we're often always trying to fight against nature with construction, with buildings, with landscapes specifically. Like it's always trying to keep nature, pushing it away by using chemicals, by doing heavy maintenance, by just like artificially making it look good. It's all working against nature. And it used to work fine, but now with climate change, all those systems are also collapsing. Like it's become, because of the rough, you can have extreme long periods of no rain with drought periods, and then you have really long periods with a lot of rain. And the old systems of using chemicals, it just doesn't work anymore. And that's where I figured out that if you understand how nature works, you can use that to your advantage, to use that in landscape design, in development. And I've wrote a book about it, 12 Universal Laws of Nature, how to use your land to its full potential. And so when you start to understand how nature works, you really leverage that to your own advantage. And just like there's many ways you can do that, but just to give you one example, is that one of the laws in my book is the law of frequency. So what we see in the law of frequency is that everything vibrates at a certain frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And that plants do the same. Just like we also vibrate at a certain frequency. And so if your plants are unhealthy, then the frequency drops. So the frequency is lower. And that actually gives signals to insects like, hey, this plant is unhealthy, let's attack it. And then you have all the insect problems that most gardens have. They struggle. And then the conventional system is you spray some chemicals on it, you kill the insects, and then your plant somewhat stays alive, but it doesn't really thrive. And in regenerative design, what I do and what I teach people is we change that. We actually support nature to grow better, to thrive more. Because if your plants vibrate at a higher frequency, then they have their own immune system and they can keep away insects on their own. So a lot of our work is really focusing on the soil and improving the health of the soil. And that becomes an advantage to your business, especially in developments. We can, like, I often come in projects where they do heavy maintenance. It's extremely expensive. Contractors come in and do maintenance works that is actually making maintenance more. Like I joke about it all the time. Like when I see the conventional garden maintenance teams, I say like, oh, look, they're doing maintenance to increase the maintenance, and it's not a joke. Like, and it's not that they are evil or something. It's just the way things have been done, and you don't have to do that. Like, so in a lot of projects, we come in and we find regenerative solutions, and we drastically decrease the maintenance, and plants look better, and then that has an effect on your real estate or on the value of your properties, because they have done tons of research showing that if a property has high quality greenery, not just like a tree and some shrubs and grass, like something really beautiful, well designed and interesting, then the value of property can increase by up to 100%. So yeah, that's really interesting to leverage that. And in a lot of things, like if you want to do tiny houses, for example, for rental units, if you neglect your landscape, it's not going to work. Like people come because they want to have an outdoor experience.
Because the house is tiny, so they're going to spend more time outside.
That could be one of the reasons, but I think more it's that tiny houses is like people want to be away from cities, away from all the concrete and all the hard materials, and they want to be embedded in nature and have a natural experience. So then that's when it's well designed and well created, then that gives good feedback and people write good reviews about it, and then you have more bookings, and yeah, that's kind of what it ends up being.
I encourage my listeners to obviously invest in properties, invest in land development, for example. So if you just bought a piece of property, as an architect, what do you look at when you come in? Do you help guide them, say this is what you should do, or here's how you can improve your land?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is very interesting, because the first thing I do is I don't give advice. The first thing I do is I observe and I analyze. This is on pretty much every project, unless it's a round square. But even then, we investigate. I tell my students that follow my course, think like Sherlock Holmes, like get to know, investigate the soil type, the wind direction, the local conditions, like the temperatures, the amount of water that you have, is there water accessibility, like really get a good understanding of what are the available resources of your property. Also the topography, a lot, like I see a lot of mistakes in the US or in North America in developments, is that they will take a piece of land and it has like hills and some topography, even if it's a little bit of topography. And when the urban planners make their designs, they just take like a piece of paper, they don't consider the topography, and they put a grid of lines on it and put the houses in, and that's it. And then when they construct it, the bulldozers come in and they have to flatten
Make
everything.
it flat. That's right.
And that's a lot of money, because and another thing is they remove the topsoil, which is actually, the topsoil is something you can use for your garden project later. But in construction, people think it's bad soil. So they remove it. They bring in a lot of trucks to get it removed. They have to pay, and then they build the whole project, and then they don't have good soil. So they have to bring in new so-called garden soil, which is also not necessarily very good quality. It can have it can create a lot of problems with weeds. So that's like, why are we have to like question certain things? Can't we keep the soil on place? Can we like really look at the topography and use the topography to our advantage, also to capture more rainfall, to reuse water, to change the way the roads are oriented, and really use that to your advantage in that sense.
So
and that should also decrease that like our ultimate goal always is to decrease construction costs by working more with the available resources, because that's true sustainability. That's really regeneration, is using what is there, so we can actually build it also more affordable. I'm not going to say like it's going to be like super cheap, because if you build really cheap, then you have a lot of issues as well. But just like being more resourceful with the materials and what is available, because that ends up being something more beautiful and something you can actually be proud of, because whatever you build is what you leave behind.
So as an architect, you come in and do you make a plan based on the typography?
Yes.
Like,
So
it's a little
after we
different than say a plat where it's just flat and you kind of like you said, did a grid and you will put a house here and a house there and I can maximize the number of houses. You're saying take it and still maximize, but try
yes.
to not try, but use the existing landscape as it is, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly correct. So after doing a deeper analysis of understanding, like we have a whole system of things that we dissect, so to speak. And then once we have that, we can then start designing and we put everything on paper. Like I do it old school. I have this tracing paper. I print out the whole plan of the area. When it's a big one, I put it on a big drawing table and I start sketching. I map everything out and then the whole project comes alive by drawing, by planning. Because if you don't make a plan, it's like it's doomed to be a very tough project or have really like I see that a lot, that people just start building without much planning and then they have to throw away a lot of materials because the beams are too long and then they have to cut them up and you have like so much waste left over. In fact, we're partnering up with a company in Canada that is building houses built based on the sizes of the materials, not the other way around. So, for example, they will use the full beam, the length of a 4x4, and build it in such ways that you don't have to cut it up. Because that can, if you add everything up, it can really increase the building costs. And then blending that into the landscape is really important. So it's really about, like, that's one of the laws in my book as well. It's the law of mentalism. So really taking the time to think before starting to build, because as you're thinking something on a paper, you'll see mistakes and you can fix them on paper before. Whereas if you just build and you're on the construction side, if you then have to fix problems, it's really costly. And the client, if you then have to go to your client and say, oh, we missed something, we have to redo it, and then the prices go up, it's a very unsatisfying feeling for your client. So really getting detailed in your planning is key.
Is there a project that's too small size-wise?
No, in fact, for me personally, I find that smaller projects can be more challenging because we want to maximize the space and really think carefully about how to use the space. Like I'd done a small backyard garden for a client in Hamburg, who's a wealthy person who's in the shipping industry in Hamburg in Germany. And so he said he lives in the city because he has to be close to the harbor for his work and his office, but he wants to be like embedded in nature. And so we created like a pocket forest garden inside of his backyard and front yard as well. So even his front yard was, when he came home, he was like walking through some plants before entering his front door. And he loved it. Like he still calls me and sends me pictures of how much he loves it. So the smaller it is, it can be more challenging sometimes. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to come to I want to skip over. So when it comes to a lot of our guys, we're not, unless we own it ourselves, we're coming in, we're bidding, we're doing the job. It's already been landscaped and everything, or it's already been gridded, planned out. And you're just like, they're telling you where to go build over here. This is your spot. Is there anything that they can do or suggest as part of a value as a contractor to the potential homeowner or developer, ideas that they can improve and be more competitive, or even as a contractor?
Oh, I love that. I think it's a really good question, Chris. I think as a general contractor, or is that what you call it? General contractors?
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
So there you have the power to still like talk to the architects and to the owner and make some suggestions. Like we're seeing now with that company that I talked to you about, is that we're looking into doing foundations without concrete. Just like we found this thing, a lot of the tiny houses are built like that as well. We just drill a metal coil, you drill that into the soil, and that becomes your foundation. So you don't have to use any concrete, and it's extremely stable. Obviously, it depends on the soil type. You can't do it in all soil types, but like this is a massive cost reduction if you don't need a basement, for example.
Is that like a helical anchor?
I don't know what the word is, but it's like a spiral. just like you have a drill to make holes in the wall,
Yeah.
but just way bigger, and that you drill into the soil. It's metal.
I believe it's around, I'm in Missouri, and we would call pre-construction anchors, and
Yeah,
it's a helical anchor, and you can look
helical.
that
Yeah.
up. Yeah, you go down and you go to you drill it down to a substrate that doesn't move.
Oh
That
yeah.
keeps the houses from moving, and then
Hmm.
you can we pour concrete around those.
Yeah.
But you're talking about in certain areas, just building off of that plate, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and you don't necessarily need the concrete because it's also expensive. And if you look at the sustainability of it, it's also concrete actually rots over time.
Yep.
So the foundations are not great. Also, if you want to rebuild your house, or actually, we're seeing now a lot of in the future, a lot of housing will have to be moved or displaced because of climate sensitive things. Like you could build somewhere now, but all of a sudden a river is out of its bank and a whole community has to move, or they can no longer live there. If you build your house with that system, you could actually disassemble it again and rebuild it somewhere else. So I think that those are things that could be interesting for the future. Because imagine if you build a house and you put all your money into it, and you have to move because of some climate
Disaster or something.
disaster. At least you can move your house, put it on, like disassemble it, and put it on a truck and bring it to somewhere else you want to live. So that's something interesting that we look at. But yeah, to be more specific on your question, what people could do is when it comes to the landscaping and the start of the project, if you're involved from the beginning, like try and find and make some suggestions by either doing it yourself or working with a regenerative landscape architect like myself, is to see like, okay, we will have to bulldoze the land because we need to pour foundations or we need to level it out. Okay, instead of removing all that soil, putting it into trucks, displacing it somewhere else, and then bringing new soil at the end, can we actually put the soil on the side, store it somewhere on the land for the time of the construction, and then reuse it to cover the soil again? That's a major major cost reduction. I think. What's your experience on Chris on the cost that it takes to actually before actual building?
Leveling is very expensive because you have the big dozers in there if you're doing a mass part of it. Since I do individual homes, custom homes, we do save the soil and reuse it as a backfill. And we mainly focus on making sure the water doesn't run to the house, it runs around the house and kind of follows the natural flow of it. And if you can follow natural flow, obviously that's the least expensive, other than you have to make new drainage ditches and so forth. Now, I have done developments where we had to plan on, just because your water flows off of one house, it flows into another person's house right next door, and you got to make a plan for that. And I was, what you're talking about is kind of interesting. Make sure you kind of, when you look at typography, you're kind of figuring how the land flows and where the water kind of runs.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. So by making the right plans, that's hopefully you're working on plans that have been designed well, so those water problems don't appear. Because if we design it with the landscape, the water will infiltrate naturally, or we can capture it and use it for irrigation later, or we can build we do a lot of like rain gardens. So it's pretty much where like a lot of water will accumulate because of roads, and you'll still have that. Then we actually make a big hole. We put in bigger chunks of stones, up to like, I would say 10 feet, sometimes deeper depending on the infiltration ability of the soil, whatever it needs. So, but then we put in big boulders. We fill that up with more infiltration soil that infiltrates easily, and then we level it out and make it a little bit lower even. And then whatever water that comes from your roof or wherever it's coming from, we put the pipes in that zone, and then we plant it. Then you can actually make something beautiful out of it. But then the water will infiltrate naturally, and that's also way better for the aquifers, because a big problem in the US is that a lot of the rivers are channeled, and so the groundwaters are decreasing rapidly.
We don't have time for it to silt through the land. earth back to the water reservoirs, and we're getting lower on our wells. Wells are
Exactly.
coming deeper.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate though, just so I'm fair to everybody.
Yes.
So your rain ponds and stuff like that, obviously they cost money versus bringing those rocks in versus hauling soil off. Is it cheaper, or is it just the fact that you're now raising the value of the property and it's offsetting those costs?
Yeah, I think it's like the rock or the rain garden that I said. It's more like um, a a solution that you have to use in case your planning has not been done well. Because if you don't do it, then you'll have water issues, and it's also like what I see mostly is that they will make the water drains, and then your water is just gone, and your soil is drying out. So by using this, you actually have water infiltrating in the depth of the soil, and that will keep your ground table a little bit higher. So actually the other plants in your garden will benefit from more humidity in the soil, and your plants will look better, they will grow better, and that eventually increases the value of your property and decreases the amount of irrigation that you have to do. So the more water you can keep on your land as it rains, the better it will be for your local plants. Even storing it in some what do you call them, water tanks, so that you can reuse it at later times.
I'm assuming it helps the trees. Because
Yes.
trees around here, I love trees because they provide the shade and
Uh-huh.
cuts down on your utility bills.
Yes.
And I was just listening the other night to people talking about, I'm assuming in the cities, but the utility bills have been high and they can't control them. And, we're trying
Because
to
of air conditioning or heating?
because they're air conditioning, heating, and just in general, utilities are just going higher. So
Uh-huh.
anyway, to help cut back on utilities would
Yes.
help anybody, I would assume.
Yeah. Oh, I love
Now,
that.
well, I want to go back to that pond. Can you have a multi-purpose, meaning can you be recreational, like putting fish in there for
Yes.
families to go fish and stuff like that as well?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. You can do that as well. So you can build a pond, a natural pond, or either with liner, like a tarp. We
Mm-hmm.
prefer not to use the tarp because after 10, 15, 20, 30 years, depending on the quality of the tarp, it'll also break, and then you have an issue. So we are now experimenting more with clay. So it's like a special clay that you use, and it actually swells up. And so it creates a natural liner. And then as the pond fills, it can fill up. And if the pond overflows next to it, there you can put more infiltration systems with the rocks and stuff. So your pond is at a level, and if it rains too much, or even the water of your roof is connected to that, you can use that, and then it just overflows and feeds the natural aquifer. So yeah, that's definitely an option. Even making it a natural swimming pool, there's tons of options to make it to add 2 or 3 or 4 functionalities to it. That's always better if you can add more functionalities to one element.
Now, at the beginning of the show, I promised that we talk about how to be more competitive. So if I am developing a property myself or building my own spec homes, and I'm doing the landscaping around those and improving the street appeal, obviously when people drive up, the first impression is most important. Landscaped homes, I would assume, bring more value and are probably sold faster than say a house that doesn't have it. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, there's some research that has been done that in the US, they had 2 communities that were built 20 years ago, and they're both at the same location. They have same access to schools, roads. It's pretty much externally, it's all the same. But internally, one community said, okay, we're actually going to double down and create way more diversity, plant different plants, also help people to create beautiful gardens, and really make that a focus point in the development. And the other development did what most developments or developers do, is just like, okay, we're going to put lawn and some trees, maybe a little bit of shrubs, and not too many trees, because they're like, when you build, they're like, oh, we just did every like big distance without the tree, so we don't have to do too many. And so what happened over the next 20 years is that the value of the properties that had invested early on in high quality landscaping, that is also natural, the value of the properties doubled. So they were same lot sizes, same access, everything is the same. The only difference was that they focused on high quality landscape and nature. And they are currently sold for double the price compared to the other one, because people love to be in nature. Like people want to be surrounded by nature, by greenery. It's like we've at some point in history we all came from nature, so we like to be in nature. Even the sounds of birds, they have figured out why humans love the sounds of birds. At least most people do, maybe not all, but they figured that it was when we were living as like wild like wild tribemen in the bush. We would walk across the forest, and just to relax, we would sit in the forest and we would listen to the birds, because the birds would mean that it's safe. There wouldn't be any predators. And so you would kind of take a nap or something, or just relax with your tribe. And if you hear the birds, it's a good sign. But if all of a sudden the birds stop chirping, there's like, oh, there's a predator that might be coming closer. So that's awareness. So that's why we still today love the sounds of birds. And if you create that in your environment, it's really going to have a massive impact on stress levels. It's like scientifically proven. So people really want to be in those type of communities rather than the ones that don't have it. Not to mention that most of the communities are using way too much chemicals, and like any chemical is not necessary just to keep the lawns look pretty. It's all kind of a scam, that you don't need all those chemicals. So finding ways to reduce the chemical inputs and actually focusing on creating a healthy system by also learning how to work with nature, and then using that in your landscaping is going to bring great results to your clients. And I just had it. I have a client from the US who's following my masterclass. He's a homeowner, and he's been doing what most people told him to do, and most garden centers tell him to do, is like put wood chips in your garden, spray kind of chemicals, and his garden was suffering. Plants were dying, and now we're shifting everything and changing it to be more regenerative. And already he's like, shit, you already saved me thousands of dollars just by the way you work with nature. Because if you look in nature, there's no maintenance, there's no costs. It all works on its own. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we don't just want a nature. We want something more. We want a garden. We want more flowers than let's say. But even native forests are beautiful. So we kind of want the best of both worlds, and it's totally doable when you have the right knowledge on how to do it. Yeah.
Well, being in a farm community that I'm in, we're used to lots of inputs. That's the chemicals and so forth that they're trying to always cut back on so they can save money and still do what they need to do, is generate crops. So yeah. I also live in, I've talked about it. I have Amish communities, and it's amazing to see the things they do without chemicals.
Oh, it's amazing.
And compared to that's in the world. That's the way we used to be before, you know. Anyway, lastly, before we go, I wanted to tell, I used to travel to New York City, and one of the largest cities in the world. Sure. That was my sales territory. And it didn't dawn on me, because I never really looked at New York City as a map per se. I just kind of knew where it was at. But for those who've never been to New York City, all these people live in lots of concrete, lots of high, but right in the middle of the island is a huge park, Central Park, right in the middle. Everybody needs nature at some point, and that's where people go to get away. That being said, all the stuff we talked about today can be found right below in our notes. Matthew, you have anything final to say before we go?
I think I want to inspire as much people to do the right thing when it comes down to landscaping, because it's going to, first of all, it's going to improve their personal life when they cut back on the chemicals. Like, there's so much chemicals being used in gardening that you don't want to be rolling in the grass with your children or grandchildren. It's poisoning them. It's creating a lot of modern diseases, cancer, diabetes, all those things. So finding a way to cut back on the chemicals, and it's easier than you think. You just need the right knowledge, and then getting expert help to do it, because you can just try it on your own. You can go on YouTube, watch thousands of videos, and you're going to get really confused because there's a lot of misinformation. And if that's you, you try it out and try and fail and do the trial and error. But it's better to invest a little bit more in getting expert guidance, because then you don't have to make those costly mistakes. And I'm not saying it to self-promote. I'm just seeing it because all my clients are telling me, oh, you saved me money. So it's really important to work with people that can help you, that are an expert in their field.
That being said, I want to say that it's always your responsibility as a salesperson to inform your clients, meaning that, if you're doing things that can help them in the long term, like increase the value of their property, they might not realize that. And if you're telling them and another competitor is not, then they're feeling more informed. Obviously, they see the value if you're doing your job right, and they'll make you more competitive, increase that value of your property over somebody else's. So
yeah, I agree. It's all about creating value rather than being the lowest bidder.
Amen. Matthieu, thank you for the time today. Again, in the show notes, you can get a hold of Matthieu. Also in the show notes, you can get a hold of me, have your free consultation on how to become a CEO. We appreciate your time today, Matthieu. I'm glad you're having a good day. Actually, I'm glad I see the sun on his face compared to when last time he and I talked, he was in Belgium. It was like late morning or early morning. So you all have a great day. This is the Hard Hat CEO. We are signing off. Bye-bye.